maybe.
If you want to listen to like music by Black Flag or to the sure.
All right. Okay, I am just gonna do this. Get my chat open here. Okay, hello everybody. It's so wonderful to see everybody. Why am I having trouble? Okay, there we go. Good evening. Welcome to the Monona New Candidates Meet and Greet. I'm Kristie Goforth, and I guess I'll just start. We'll do a quick introduction of myself and Nadia Dominguez, who's running for City Council, and Patrick DePula, who's also running for City Council. I'll quickly just tell you the way we're going to take your questions is we're going to ask you. So if you are unfamiliar with Zoom, at the very bottom, there's a button that says chat, and you can click that chat, and then you can type in a message. You can just write your name and say, I have a question, or even just put your name in there. And that's how I will know to call on you. And so you can ask us your questions. And then if you could keep your questions somewhat concise, maybe to about 30 seconds, just so we can try to get through as many questions as we can. And if you could state your name and let us know if your question is for everybody or if it is just for one of us, that type of thing. I got one more person getting in here. So I'll run down those guidelines one more time since we have one late joiner. So. And I think he's going to have a question. So if you have a question, we'll ask you to type your name into the chat, and then I will know to call on you. And if you could keep your question to about 30 seconds or less, or just keep it somewhat concise so we can get through to all of those. I think that's all we've got. So I'll start with a quick introduction of myself. Well, first, wonderful to see you all. Thank you so much for taking this time out and to get to know some new candidates. My name is Kristie Goforth. I live on the north end of Monona, and I have two children. One goes to Winnequa School. That's my son named Bodie, and he is 7. My daughter is Sydney, and she just started at Glacial Drumlin this past year. My day job is I'm the executive director of Free Bikes for Kids Madison. That is a part-time job, so it's 20 hours a week, which is why I feel like I could have the capacity to run for mayor. I have owned a business for 10 years, and I've run, I've been a part of, say, 3 nonprofit organizations as either executive director or key leadership. And yeah, I'm really excited for this opportunity and excited for your questions tonight. So I'll kick it off to you, Nadia.
All right, hello, welcome. Thank you guys for attending. My name is Nadia Dominguez. I live near Wildhaven Park. I have 2 adult stepsons, Angus and Malcolm, and my little baby, Shih Tzu Gizmo. Let's see, I am a microbiology professor turned entrepreneur. So I've been running my small business, Eastward Studio, for 7.5 years. So I've worn many hats, being the founder, the owner, the curriculum developer, all those things. And I have decided to, I suppose, enter into a new ring here and perhaps give a new fresh set of eyes and perhaps a highly analytical perspective to the governing body in Monona. And yeah, anything else I should add there, Kristie?
I think you got it.
All right, great, thank you.
And Patrick?
Hi, my name is Patrick DePula. I am currently I am the chef and owner of Salvatore's Tomato Pies in Monona. We've got a number of restaurants. Before that, I've long been a community activist. I've served on the Dane County Board of Supervisors about 20 years ago, and many City of Madison committees when I lived in the City of Madison. In addition to that, I founded a nonprofit or co-founded a nonprofit, which is the Madison Area Chefs Network, which brings people together to strengthen our food system and provide solid opportunities for people that are feeling or experiencing food insecurity. So there's a lot of things that I've been involved in over the years, and I'm really excited to be running for Monona City Council.
All right, fantastic. We have got a couple of questions loaded in the chat, or well, we've got Mitch for starters. So Mitch Sorrell, you want to kick it off? can you hear me, Mitch?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay.
Hi, everybody. I'm Mitch Sorrell. My wife Beth and I are coming up on our 14th year here in Monona, and we love the town. It's a great place to live, but there's issues here that definitely need to be addressed that have not been addressed by the current city government. And this question is for you, Kristie.
Oh, okay.
Back in March, late March, right after Governor Evers issued his first stay-at-home order, it was on March 24th. I called Mayor O'Connor at home and left her a message. I asked her to call me back because I wanted to know specifically what the mayor and what the alders were going to do to help plan ahead specifically for Monona as far as the COVID response was concerned. She called me back. I asked her the question, what specifically it was they were going to do. Her answer to me was, we specifically here in Monona are not going to do anything. We are going to follow the county. We are going to follow the city in Madison. But as far as our own local response is concerned, we're not coming up with our own. There's no need to, is what she said. I didn't take that well, and I told her so. Now looking back at everything that's transpired, with it's almost a year now, it's hard to believe, but it's almost a year. I'd like to know, Kristie, what would your answer have been had you been the mayor at the time? Had I asked you that question, what would you have said to me? I also want to know about the situation that was well publicized recently, where a number of alders, current serving alders, went after you publicly for reaching out to Dane County about setting up what you specifically could do as an alder to help the city battle the COVID situation. And you, I think an exceptional effort on your part was to go out and contact some local business connections that you had to try to set up vaccination sites. And you were told publicly, rebuked for doing that. And what's interesting is that alders apparently from all over Dane County, from other cities, have been knocking down the doors of Dane County to try to help their communities. And not one single alder except for yourself reached out. I'd like to know your opinion on the whole situation.
Okay.
Please.
Yeah, that's correct. You're correct in that. You know, I ran our Chamber of Commerce here for 5.5 years. I have very close relationships with our business community. I was a fierce advocate for them for those years and gained their respect and trust. I see one of them here, at least, Jim Lampy. And, you know, the pandemic has touched every single one of us, and our business community is really suffering as well. I would have immediately assembled a COVID task force comprised of business owners that were interested, concerned residents. We probably have some retired healthcare professionals in our community. They would have been essential to have on that team. You know, the mayor can pull together an emergency, it's called an emergency plan committee. And that wasn't done. I would have done that. That, you know, this is a global pandemic. Like I said, it touched every single person in our community, and it still is. And I think, you know, I know my opponent has said that she has led us through the global pandemic and through her leadership. And I would ask you how she has done that. I think I saw a letter to the editor supporting her saying, well, she encouraged mask wearing and she encouraged us shifting to Zoom. Well, I would state that everyone in the world did that. That is not something that was stepped up, you know, as far as leadership from this city. And as far as Dane County Emergency Management, I did have a meeting with Dane County Emergency Management, and I asked them, what should I as an alder be doing right now to help my community and to advocate for my community and the residents here? Because, well, our public safety rests squarely on the mayor's shoulder. That is the core function of your local government, is to keep us safe. And so I asked them that question, and they said, well, the thing you should be doing right now, and this is what we're telling every alder that's knocking down our door, is contact your local business community and find a few sites that might potentially serve as vaccine sites. And, you know, having run the Chamber of Commerce, that was a very easy effort for me. It literally took me less than 1 hour. And I thought about it strategically. I thought, you know what, we need a site on the north end. We need a site on the south end. Having sites on the bus lines will be, you know, very important. Having a site in the middle. So I called Buck and Honey's with their lower, they have their lower level event space. And so I asked them, I asked Tom if he would be interested in this, if it becomes a possibility. There's so many unknowns right now with the vaccine. And he said, absolutely. I know this is the key to us opening up. I will do anything I can do to help with this. I called the East Side Club, and Alyssa said, I need to talk with our board of directors. She got back to me almost immediately and said, absolutely. We've been doing blood drives. We know the routine. We're comfortable with this. And then I called Monona United Methodist Church. They've also done blood drives, and they said, absolutely. We are, you know, we are ready if that opportunity comes. We want to help our community. And we know if the vaccine comes, it's going to come very quickly. So we have to be ready to jump. And so that's what I did. And I know that my actions were called dangerous. That's quote unquote. I was told what I was doing was dangerous in this community. I don't see how that was dangerous. I think that's essential. I know that when the vaccine comes here, I don't want to have to wait at Alliant Energy Center for 4 hours to get my vaccine. I would like to have local options. We have a lot of senior citizens in our community that maybe can't travel to Alliant Energy Center, and they need a local space. So those are some of the things I would have done. I'm a proactive style leader. I am not a leader that is reactive, and I'm not a wait and see type of leader. That's not what I do. So I hope that answered your question. All right, we've got one more. This is Dan. Dan, do you want me to read your question, or do you want to ask your question? I'll ask his question. He's got it there. Can you tell me about the event that made you aware that there was a need for a change in city government? Nadia, do you want to kick that one off?
Sure. I would actually say there are probably two events that occurred. One was, a singular point in time on, I believe it was June 2nd, the Conte Furge incident that was in my backyard, essentially, that spurred me to take action and just ask and, I guess, chime in and kind of listen and learn there. Also, I suppose when I was inside, I had a little, as I learned more about the incident, I also started looking and asking more about the city governance. And what I realized and learned from many people was that it's basically been led and run by the same people or groups of people for decades, and that there's, people are groomed to take over and continue the status quo. And so I looked at that as those are probably two events. One is a singular kind of moment in time, and the other is just more of an enlightenment, that recognizing that we have that what's been going on, it's been, we've had decades of the same type of leadership. And I really do think it's time to really transform together and to look for, a brighter future where Monona is thriving, and that we see things a little more inclusivity and taking care of one another. I think that's probably the best way I can wrap it up there.
Patrick?
So one of the things that really piqued my interest was discovering that well, the city of Monona basically doesn't require bids for projects that are under $25,000. It's literally the city council that makes those determinations as to, you know, what companies are going to contract to actually do work for the city without sending out bids, and it's not a competitive process. That to me seems like it's unfair for businesses in general, because it really opens up the opportunity for people to pick favorites and just go with the same companies over and over again, regardless of whether they're getting the best deal or regardless of whether it's in the public's best interest. It's really comes down to, well, who do we like? And that to me poses a problem. In comparison, the city of Madison requires a bid process for items that are over $10,000. You know, the city of Madison requires at least 3 competing bids if that project is over 10,000, and a formal sealed bid process if it's over 50. Monona seems to be acting as if it's some sort of well, it might be stuck back in the latter part of the 20th century, I suppose, when it comes to such things. And I really feel that it's in the best interest of the business community and the public to make sure that those bid processes are competitive. That was one of the things that really made me want to jump in the ring and use my business experience and my professional experience and leadership experience to try and make sure that we're acting in an ethical fashion. And that's one of the reasons that, you know, if elected, I will immediately work hard toward creating a ethics ordinance that will govern the conduct of elected officials in the city of Monona. And unfortunately, it's necessary. And I say that because in a perfect world, we would just do the right thing and we wouldn't need to legislate, you know, to create legislation to make sure that people are doing the right thing. But I really see that as an area that could be used in a negative way, and it needs to be fixed.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Patrick. For me, like Nadia, it's 2 things. It was the lack of leadership when the pandemic started, and not engaging the business community and being proactive there. But the other one was September 17th, when Elliot Johnson died by the Walmart. And so what happened, and so I bring a different perspective as someone who's been on city council and watching this from a front row seat. And so what happened there is, so in my day job with Free Bikes for Kids, we give about 2,000 bicycles away to the BIPOC community primarily each year. And so I'm very connected to that community. And I watched the conversations happening on social media around that event. And what the story was that our officers had shot him in the back. And I saw this conversation happening everywhere on social media. And as someone who's, you know, my business was a graphic design agency, but I used to do a lot of social media management for businesses. My company did, and I've done that for my nonprofit organizations as well. And with social media, a spark can catch a blaze very, very quickly. And you have to know how to manage your communication channels. I think 3 years ago, I led a workshop with MESBA called Creating Your Social Media Crisis Communication Plan. And you want to have a crisis communication plan when you run any organization before the crisis starts, because you cannot develop that when you're under crisis. And unfortunately, no one from the city attended that workshop because all of those sessions are open to the city as well. But after that, I was very concerned because Black Lives Matter protests were happening all over the area. And I saw the hate and vitriol toward the city of Monona because of this issue and this rumor. And so I emailed the mayor and our police chief, and I said, please, I don't know if you see what's happening on social media, but you need to make a public statement immediately. And please release the body cam footage, because that is the reason we have body cam footage, is so we can refute these types of rumors and show that, sorry, someone's in the waiting room. This is me multitasking. And so she emailed me back and said, Kristie, we're not in control of this situation. DCI is investigating. We can't speak out. And I said, actually, that's completely inaccurate. You are solely responsible for the public safety of this community. And the way I'm looking at it right now, Monona Drive might never look the same again. It could get burned down tonight. Please, I'm begging you. I was so worried. I'd lost sleep for 2 nights over this. And she emailed the city administrator, Brian, what do you think? And I was like, oh dear. And she said, oh, and I didn't get a response back, but then later, but maybe within an hour, they reissued the same statement from DCI. Once again, it did have one line added to it saying that none of our officers fired their weapon, but there was no public statement. There was no body cam footage released. And so what ended up happening? We had a protest in the parking lot of City Hall. It was streamed live on Facebook for the whole world to see. And I watched that go down, and nobody came out to speak with them. So they came into City Hall, but nobody was around. And they were saying, where is everybody? It's like everybody is hiding. And they were actually probably hiding. I saw the city council email saying we're in our back of offices, and they were scared. And so as a leader of this community, what she should have done is gone out and talked to them. Because regardless of the circumstances around Elliot Johnson's death, those were his family members and friends and people who cared for him. And you have to, in that situation, you have to have compassion for someone who lost a loved one. And if she is not capable of having those communications, because I don't believe she's ever worked with diverse groups. That's an assumption on my part, but I'm going to take a guess on that. I don't believe she could effectively communicate with those groups. And so what I actually was almost about to drive over there, but I was like, I'm not the mayor. This is not my responsibility. I was so conflicted. But I wish she would have delegated me. I would have gone out and speak with them. And that is not easy to do. It takes humility, it takes compassion, and it takes courageous leadership. But that night, the Beltline was shut down. And I believe I believe if I had been the mayor that I might have been able to prevent that. I probably would have ordered some Salvatore's pizzas. I probably would have sat out there and talked with them and just had a conversation. That was the moment where I was like, we are at risk as a city with this mayor leading the way. This is we're in really unique times, and the social unrest that we've seen, we've not seen the end of it. So I feel like we are at risk if we, I felt like I had to run. I honestly felt like it wasn't a decision. I felt like I had to in order to keep our people safe. Sorry, that was lengthy. I apologize.
That's okay. I have one more thing to add, if that's okay. And again, one of the reasons that I decided to run too, one of the things that prompted me to become more engaged in Monona was finding out that, there was an agenda item with the city of Monona to see and hear about a project at Southtown, which is going to create a large storage facility that is definitely something that doesn't really add value to the city of Monona in any way, shape, or form. And it kind of offended me as someone who worked really hard on the redevelopment of the Madison side of the Broadway Southtown corridor, the former Simpson Street neighborhood, what's now known as Lake Point. For many years on the CDBG Commission and the Housing Committee, we worked to turn that neighborhood around and make it a place that was available to renters and home and owner-occupied housing and people that wanted to live in that neighborhood because it's a great location. And to see Southtown turn and become more and more blighted is kind of depressing. And looking at the work or the lack of work that the city of Monona was doing on that property was kind of the impetus for me to really want to get involved. And there's so many other things that we could do with that property if we have vision, if we are being creative. That was Madison's first airport. It could be called Airport Station. You can make a work-life community there. You can create businesses, you can create jobs, you can redevelop it so it's something that's reflective of what's going on in the 21st century, as opposed to this state idea of the standard mall that exists now. And one of the things that I'd like to do as a council member is to create a committee of elected officials and planning personnel and architects and the business community to really look at what can be done at that location and develop some tools that could be used for the redevelopment. And it's something that could really become a jewel for the greater area in Dane County in general if we put some effort into it. Thanks.
I'm sorry to not get to the next question, but I think Southtown is a worthy discussion, and we could segue into that right now. It is interesting to me that you're seeing all the incumbents now. Southtown is now a priority to them. After
No, and I brought it up on Nextdoor, and now it's a topic. Right?
It is. And so, why wasn't it an issue 20 years ago, 10 years ago, when they were, at the table, the senior leadership that was at the table? And I think, oh boy, it is a complicated project because we have multiple owners at that site. And the city does not control the land. We do not own the land. But what the city could do is encourage some strategic planning, site planning for that property. And I actually have talked with the major property owner there. There's 3 property owners. I used to know him when I ran the Chamber of Commerce. And I asked him if he would be willing to finance a master planning session for that. And he said he would be willing to do that for up to $5,000. And so while the city should not be driving that or facilitating that, we should have a seat at the table, as should WPS, the office park that's right next door, any of the stakeholders there. And we could really, like Patrick said, it could be an amazing destination space for us and really be a catalyzer for changing that corridor. And I think I was going to mention one other thing. Ooh, well, I forgot what it was. But anyways, I feel like it's just a huge opportunity. Oh, I was going to just say, it is the last best developable site along the Beltline Highway. And so the fact that it hasn't been touched, that speaks of our larger economic development issues that also have not been addressed in the last 10 or 20 years. And maybe we'll get to that. I've got a lot on that as well. Okay, so the next one is coming from Jim Lampy. Jim, do you want to ask your question or you want me to do it?
You can, if you would.
All right. And I was going to bring this up too, the yacht club. Jim's a member of the yacht club. And he says, how would we have handled the Triangle project that ended up costing Monona $1 million settlement plus attorney fees? So I'll just lay a little groundwork in case people don't remember what happened there. The yacht club had a 99-year lease for some slips on the Yahara River, if you remember where the Chase Bank was. And the city said, your lease is invalid. It's illegal, and we're going to not honor that lease, that 99-year lease. We are taking those slips from you. We are giving them to a different business. And that's kind of where it went. And so a lawsuit ensued. The city had to settle. And we, as taxpayers, had to pay the yacht club $1 million, which I will say at Plan Commission 2 weeks ago, I think, the yacht club came forward with their development and they're reinvesting in their building and making it very beautiful. So at least our taxpayer dollars are being put to good use because it's going to look great. But yeah.
Let me just add, we paid $1 million
Yes.
to a business, to an organization, to take their property essentially and just give it to someone else.
Yes,
Mhm.
we did that. For me, number one, I would have asked the yacht club to sit down and have a cup of coffee. Can we have a conversation? We are not a city of 10 million people or even 1 million people where we don't know each other. I know the leaders of the city. Well, our municipal judge is a yacht club member. And so he works at City Hall. The channels for communication were there. And this goes to our larger communication issues. Why can't we just have a conversation and start working these problems out? That's number one, how I would have started that. Our city attorney, I think, I have a great relationship with our city attorney, but he's not a riparian rights expert. And he misread that agreement, and that was on him. He said, I just watched the interview the other day on the news because I wanted to, brush up. And he was on there saying their lease is not valid. It's not legal. Well, he was wrong. And it cost us $1 million. We do still have that city attorney. So yeah, Patrick or Nadia, if you have any other comments on that.
I just can't get over the fact that, I watched that play out in the news and I wasn't 100% paying attention to it at the time because I was busy and it wasn't something that was in my wheelhouse at the moment. But thinking about the facts surrounding it, we literally took a lease, a valid lease, and basically assigned the property to someone else and gave it away. And not only did we have to, and then we compensated the people, the original leaseholders with $1 million. It's just kind of it's a giant waste of taxpayer money. Was TIF involved in that project as well? It was,
TIF
wasn't it?
With the riverfront? Oh, yes, it was.
So we have all of these incentives for that development, and the city is expending additional money on top of it. It's probably not the way that I would have handled it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, it is a tough one. I really struggled with that because I just, I was watching as the yacht club members were going into the city council chambers asking, please just talk with us. Please don't do this, pleading. And I saw our mayor roll her eyes at some of the yacht club members that were speaking. And this could take me to another discussion about our culture and the culture that's been propagated here by the senior leadership. It is not one of inclusivity. It is not one of understanding or empathy. It is one that seems to be adversarial, and I don't understand it. And it has me greatly concerned. I actually felt it the entire time I ran MESPA. I guess maybe it's anti-business, an anti-business attitude, maybe, because I couldn't get the city I couldn't get them to come to my events. I couldn't get them to participate. Mayor Bob was actually, he was great about it. He was a big networker. But after he left, boy, those channels completely fell apart. And it was really a shame. And that was before I ran as a write-in. So it wasn't because I just blew up those relationships. But yeah. Did that answer your question all right, Jim? All right. Okay. I have a question for all three candidates. That is Tanya Hamilton.
So my question, and maybe some of this you guys have already touched on, I'm wondering what, a lot of what you will be doing is meetings and pretty rote and maybe a lot of boring stuff. But, if you are in fact elected to the positions you're running for, you're going to have an opportunity to champion some things. And I'm just wondering what each of you sort of broadly would feel that you would like to champion, either something that you feel is an opportunity that we're not taking advantage of currently, or a problem that you see needing to be addressed currently, but something more big picture. I'm just curious what each of you guys would say about that.
All right. Anyone want to jump in?
I guess I can. A couple of those things are, I'm going to talk about ethics again. I'm going to talk about ethics in government. It's super important to me that the things that we do as elected officials are shined upon by the brightest possible light. The public's business should be done in public. And for me, I'm kind of offended by, well, for instance, the last city council meeting. We watched several longtime alders that have been on the council for 30 and 40 years argue against public participation. And what I mean by that is we were talking about, or I'm not talking about it, I was just watching, but the council was talking about potentially recording city meetings and having them available for public view online. And I watched alders actually talk about how, well, we need to get consent from the committee members doing the public's business in order to have them recorded and transmitted online. To me, that's just ridiculous. Why would any public official argue against transparency? And that is one of the major tenets that I'm running upon, is that the public's business should be done in public. under the brightest possible shining light, because otherwise things happen in the darkness that we don't really need to have happen, and insider deals don't need to happen. And that's why the city of Monona needs to create an ethics ordinance that governs how elected officials conduct themselves. And like I said before, it's unfortunate that we have to do that, but the city of Madison has one, and the city of Monona does not. So that's definitely something that I would champion if elected to the city council. In addition to that, I would also work really hard on like high quality economic development that's sustainable and responsible. There's many things that we could do in the city. We could talk about San Damiano. We could talk about how there's not really a place in in Dane County where you can enjoy the lakes if you're not just enjoying it as a park situation. We have the Memorial Union Terrace, right, which is kind of a great place to hang out. But we can also maybe think outside the box with what we do with San Damiano, and maybe we can do things like create a boardwalk, create some commerce that's happening there where people have public access, but there's things to do there besides just relax. Maybe there's all kinds of things that we can do, but I guess what I would bring to the council and I would champion is inclusivity and transparency. The public needs to know what's going on, and no one benefits by hiding those things from people. Thanks.
Nadia, it looked like you were going to jump in. Yeah.
Yeah, I can, I mean, of course, I'm gonna parallel and say similar things to Patrick. Is certainly transparency is up there. And for me, we've wasted a lot of time in these committee meetings talking about the Wisconsin open meeting law, which is, you know, in my opinion, crystal clear. It's a non-issue. There's nothing to discuss. That as a public servant, as a public official, it clearly says those meetings can be recorded, and they should be, and that the excuse is made that it would be costly, whereas, you know, I can easily use my finger and press a record button. That doesn't cost anybody anything. It doesn't, no taxpayer, and it also allows for the city and its residents to participate and at a time that works for them, creates more engagement, allows for facilitating more input. So certainly I concur there with Patrick there. As far as inclusivity, I'm the first Latina on the ballot for Monona. We really do need to look at how to be more inclusive in our representation to get on committees. I'm not allowed on committees because I'm not handpicked by those who are currently in leadership. That also means others are not, and that's, you know, if we look at things like diversity, equity, and inclusivity, those are benefits for the community or businesses. You look at whatever organization you want to look at, those are to be inclusive, to be equitable, to tend towards diversity is something that leads to better financial success, leads to better emotional well-being. So I think, you know, that's a big part, and lending itself or following that path is also looking at being a liaison with the new police chief. And for me, I think that my interactions with police growing up, one, having the chief of police of my hometown as my best friend's father, but also being targeted by police as well, because of not necessarily my skin color, but because of my last name. So I think that for me, that's a big deal. And that's a big part to creating a community that feels a little more, that is more, not just feels, but actually is more inclusive. So I look at that as something. And then as well as looking at, you know, for me, I am really interested in the finances. You know, everyone here, you know, in the Madison area, we pay a lot in taxes, and I'd like to know, I want to really get down to the nitty gritty in terms of commercial versus residential taxes, and, you know, really get out the microscope there and really kind of dissect what's going on and how can we be more creative in generating revenue, and looking at how are things and how are people, how is commercial property taxed? How is residential property taxed? And I think that's really important. The whole community is interested in that, and the whole community is interested in finances, and to be able to make that more accessible to others and offer an educational component so people can really give input. I'm certainly not the expert, definitely not the current leadership. They may have experience in bureaucracy, but they certainly do not have expertise. And for me to come in and say, hey, I have all the expertise in the world. Yeah, I'm great at data analysis and I am highly analytical, but I also know to ask people to, like Kristie says, you seek out the expert, and a lot of this isn't, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. So I think that, I think that's another thing that I would champion in terms of just being able to bring in a fresh set of eyes and really do some critical analysis and bring in some other experts, as well as hopefully help to facilitate input from the residents of Monona. So I guess that's 3 things.
It's really hard to choose. I'm going through my head going, oh, there's so many things. There's so many things. I would say the wait and see style of leadership has led to many things that need to be priority. Our finances are absolutely right at the top. We are getting into dangerous territory with the level of debt we have as a city. I do want to dig into that a little bit. So that's big on my mind. Our communication challenges, like Patrick said, I was the alder that brought that forward, thinking, here we are in a virtual atmosphere, and we're not putting our committee meetings on YouTube. This is a phenomenal opportunity to engage the public and let them see what's happening and let them have a voice at their convenience. We are leaving a lot of people out by requiring people attend our meetings around our schedule, around our city government's 9 to 5 schedule. And those people can offer plenty of insight and perspective, and really they have the complete right to do that. We need to hear from them. So I did not expect that to be controversial. And one of the alders said, when she asked her committees about it, they all said they would quit. They would all resign because they had to be on YouTube. I was like, wow, okay, that's really interesting. So communication is a big one for me. And I have this comprehensive communication strategy. I'm just so excited about it. Why can't we lead the way and be at the forefront of all of the new communication technology tools that are available to us? Why can't we? Well, I would say with the senior leadership that we've had for so long, that could be one reason. But you do have the option now to pick 3 new candidates who are at the peak of their career, who understand social media and communication and technology. So I think, I'm so excited about the opportunities that I could bring forward and the ways that you could engage. We could have at our city council meetings a call-in period where you don't have to come to a city council meeting and, speak in front of all of those people in the city council chambers. It's a very intimidating environment. You could call in. We could use a QR code and you could maybe text us. Oh, geez, someone's in the waiting room here. Okay. And so, some of those, I think those tools, we can embrace those. We have all the platforms available. We've got a YouTube channel. We've got a radio station. We've got a TV channel. We've got a local newspaper. We've now got a citywide e-newsletter, which was my idea. But, some people like to claim it as their own. That leads to the culture of our city leadership right now. It's a little bit troublesome. But if we can dig into the finances just a little bit, because it's being said that I'm misinformed and that I'm not experienced enough. And even though I've had 20 years of organizational leadership and I've done budgets for multiple organizations and led multiple organizations with numerous stakeholders, that apparently I'm not experienced enough. But, I guess maybe I don't think experience necessarily relates to your age, but I guess that's what others are believing. So, okay, here's the hard part. We're going to do a little math, all right? And I promise this is math my 7-year-old son could do. So it's not going to be too tough. I'm actually going to share the screen with you. I'm going to share the document. Let me see if I can find it. Oh boy. Okay, I got to do one thing here. We're going to look at our debt. We're going to look at our debt as a city. Hopefully I can get to it. Can I get to it? Wait, let me try again. Okay. Okay, right now. There it is. Yay. Okay. You should see this. Let me know if you see a spreadsheet, a budget document. Do you see that? A budget document? I can zoom in if that's a little small. Okay, so what we've got going on here is, this is our, you can Google this or Google it. My kids would laugh at me for saying that. You can go to mymonona.com and in the search bar, type in 2021 operating budget. And we adopted that on November 20th of, I believe it was November 20th of 2020. This document has 2 columns. I'll scroll to the top. It shows our 2020 budget right here and our 2021 budget. So we've got 2 columns side by side. And what you won't find in this document, unfortunately, is the total number of our city debt. I don't know why it's not here. I guess I would say lack of transparency would be my hunch, but I don't know. Maybe it was just a mistake and mistakenly left out. So in 2020, our city debt was $50 million. In 2021, that debt is going to increase to $55 million. Those numbers are not here. I had to email our finance director to get those numbers. But right here, you see this title, debt service, and it shows that our debt is $3.075 million, okay, for 2020. Then if we go to the next page in our budget, we're going to go down here. And you're going to see our total city property tax levy is $8 million. That $3 million is just 2 lines up from there. So all you have to do, and you will hear, sometimes you'll hear our opponents talk about how complicated these numbers are. And Patrick and Nadia and I like to sometimes have a drinking game with how many times they say it's complicated. But I believe it's our responsibility as city leaders to break this down for you so it's not complicated, because we know you are smart people and you can digest this. You just have to know what you're looking at. So if you want to pull out your phone calculator, what you could do is, our general debt service is $3 million roughly. So type in $3 million into your phone, and that's our debt service. So that's like the interest on our credit card. Let's put it in those words so you can understand it. That's the interest that we're paying on our debt. And then we're going to divide that by the $8 million that we collect every year in property taxes. You'll get a number of 0.375. And if you divide that or times that times 100, that's 37.5. So 37.5% of your property taxes are going to our debt service alone, paying the interest on our credit card. So that calculates to about $1 in $3 of our property taxes going to the interest on our credit card, not going to services, not going to the pool that we love, not going to our public transit, not going to our road maintenance, not going to our park maintenance, not going to our police and fire department. It's going to interest on our credit card. Typically, cities want to have a target of 15%. We are at 38%. And in 2021, it gets worse because we're adding 5 million. So I'll just calculate that one out. So it's 3.25 million, 325 million divided by the 84. Let's see. Yep, there we are. We're at now 38.6 million. So we've gone up. If I am taking our $50 million, let's take 50 million divided by 8,000. That's how many of us there are in this community. Let's see if I get that right. 50 million divided by 8,000. No, I did it wrong. Well, anyways, the tax burden for each man, woman, and child in this community is like $6,250. That is really high. And in 2021, that goes up to almost $7,000. It goes to 6825, I think. So, wow, Madison's at 2,400. And someone had a letter in the paper today. I'm going to stop sharing this. You can find that document on the city's website. Someone had a letter in the to the paper saying that we have the highest debt of a city in the state of Wisconsin, which I don't know if that's a fact, but I liked the statistic because I feel very uncomfortable with that number. I don't like having debt. My only debt is my home. I am adverse to debt. I like keeping my numbers in check. And so while you'll hear my opponent state that I am saying inaccurate things, because what she will say is that our debt service is 23% of our operating budget, Kristie, not 38%. Well, I'm not saying that it's 20, I'm not saying our operating budget. The 23% of our operating budget makes it sound a lot better, doesn't it? It doesn't sound as dicey. What I'm saying is it's 38% of our property tax dollars is going to debt service. So they're kind of changing it to operating budget. So it sounds a little bit more palatable, but we are getting into dangerous territory. And it is true that we have a great bond rating. It's AA+. It's not AAA. We can strive for AAA. But I think, the chickens are going to come home to roost, as they say. And we are at risk with this kind of debt. And it is going to come and get us at some point. And we have got to get a handle on it. So for me, those two things, the finances, our debt, and the communication challenges are really enormous. I hope you bared with me on the math there. All right. Getting through these. I have a comment and question. It's Ronisha Strozier. Ronisha. Oh, and Jason, I'm so sorry I missed you. Jason, let's cue you up next, okay? Ronisha? Or Jason, if you're ready, sorry.
Am I next?
Go for it, Ronisha, go for it.
Hi, I'm Ronisha, and can you all hear me properly?
Yes.
Thumbs up. Okay, so one of the issues that I have with Monona is that I feel like as a person who lives in an apartment, I'm not really heard or recognized by the council. And just because I live in an apartment doesn't mean that I'm not a valuable community member. When I pay my taxes every year, they still ask me what the school code is in the area that I live in. So my money comes here. I don't have any children. And the thing that concerns me is parking in the city. I actually went to a council meeting and brought up the issue, and I felt like I was not heard. So I said, okay, maybe they will come up with something later. I gave them the opportunity to do that. And then it comes down to, we have a city emergency. And now my apartment complex want to plow the area. And so I need to park on the street while they're plowing, but there's a city emergency. So I cannot park on the street. And the options for parking are nowhere near where I live. So it would take me over an hour to walk down to one of the parks to park. And so I called the city. No one had any solutions. I called my alder. And the thing that bothers me is that I brought this up as an issue and no one took it seriously. And I even talked with the city manager. He was very kind. He worked with me, and I do appreciate the time that he spent working with me and coming up with a plan. But I asked if there could be a task force to deal with some of these situations in Monona that could be created. Let's get in front of it. Let's have a plan in the future. And I just don't feel like that has been taken into account. And so I just wanted to know what you all would do in those types of situations and how you would represent those members who are not homeowners.
Can I start with that?
Please.
So Ronisha, thank you for saying that. And number one, whether you rent or you own a home, you're still paying property taxes. So, that's one of those things that I think sometimes people forget. You're renting an apartment, but you are definitely paying the property taxes of that building. And you have every right, as anyone else does in the city of Monona, to have the same response from government. And I think that, as an example, I used to live on the south side of Madison. I lived on the south side for like 13 years in the former Simpson Street, which is now Lake Point. We had problems on the street with parking. Same situation in the buildings that we lived in, where in order to plow our parking lot, we had to go on the street. But many, many years ago, the city of Madison designated that street as no parking because of an open air drug market that existed on it, 15 years before. So, I banded the neighbors together and successfully lobbied the city to restore parking on one side of the street. So during snow emergencies, we can get that stuff taken care of. And I think really the reason that you're not getting a response is because they just don't care right now, right? They don't care. That's not an issue that's significant enough to them to make the effort to, make that change. And I think that with the right amount of pressure, it can be done. And you just need someone that's persistent and tenacious that can do that. And that's part of representing people, right? So I think that any of us who are talking to you right now would definitely make something like that a priority, because it's not we're representing you, we're representing everyone, and that's the kind of thing that upsets me when, especially if it's perceived that someone who's living in an apartment is not getting the same access to services as a homeowner. Thank you.
Nadia?
Yeah, I'll just jump in. And Ronisha, I think that, and maybe I'm putting words in the mouth for Kristie and Patrick here, but any one of us, if you make that phone call, text, email us, I think we'd say, yeah, we can come take a look at the situation, because first and foremost, I can't say I'm familiar with what the routes are, and just to come out and say, hey, can we come up with a solution? And I'm also wondering, do you see a solution?
Well, I did talk with the city manager, and he came up with a solution. They actually lifted it for some days.
Oh.
But the problem is that we need that for the whole city. I had to call multiple offices. I called the police department. I called Parks and Rec. I'll be honest, I called Kristie. I called everyone, and it just, no one knew what to do. And then they also said they didn't know it was a problem, which really surprised me. Because this has been brought up before, and I spoke before the city council, and there's not a lot of Black people that speak on city council. So I know they remember me being there. So it's not trying to say bad things about them. It's just that, yes, my issue may not be that of a homeowner's issue, but it is still an important issue that I'd like to be taken seriously.
And you should be. You absolutely should be.
Did you have any more, Nadia? I don't want to cut you off.
No, I mean, it sounds like half the problem is knowing who to contact and who's the one who can actually make the decision to lift some of the restrictions, and obviously communicate that and say, hey, on certain days, maybe, on odd days or even days, we lift the restriction, you can park on one side versus the other. And I mean, I can't say, Ronisha, what they told you, but if they were able to do it for a short period of time, you think they'd be able to do that for other situations, and not just your apartment complex, but as you said, the other area, and then communicate it, via newsletter, email, and in particular to the landlords of these apartment complexes, because most likely that's the easiest way to get the word out, is to post it through the buildings. So yeah, thanks for bringing that up.
I know when I was campaigning a year ago, I met with someone at your building who expressed the same problem, because your building it's an older building. It was one stall per unit, at a time when people had one car per family, right? And so that issue has been going on for a long time. I met with someone at your building. This one really got to me because it's a multifaceted issue. It comes down to process. Did you know that there was going to be a parking restriction on your street? Did you know that in advance? Oh, I think I alerted you.
Yes, so Kristie alerted me, and I actually went to the city council meeting and asked them, I said, okay, well, even if you vote against this, can there be another plan in place for those who are displaced? And, you know, one of the alders said, well, that's the landlord's issue. They need to manage their tenants. And I just felt like it was dismissed.
It was.
No,
And,
the landlord should be talking to the city. That's the thing.
Yeah.
The landlord should be talking to the city, and
or the
there
city
should
should be talking to the landlord. Why can't the city be reaching out to the landlord?
That is
Yeah.
correct.
Yeah,
Mhm.
either way. And you know, you weren't alone in that. And I met with another resident. So to back up a little, so in March, right when the sky was falling, it was like 2 weeks before the COVID sky started to fall, all of those residents that were going to be impacted by this new parking ordinance were sent a letter stating that there was going to be a city council meeting in April. And if they had any concerns about the parking ordinance, they needed to attend the meeting and voice their concerns. Well, that city council meeting was canceled because we were all panicking, you know, fearful and not sure what to do. And they were never told that it was going to come again to the October, I believe it was, October council meeting. And I tipped Ronisha off. I tipped off a few other people. I was like, oh my goodness, these people don't even know this parking change is coming. And so I'm going crazy on text, you know, telling people this so that if they want to speak out, they can.
I'll tell you this though, no one in my neighborhood got ticketed having their cars on the street during.
There's no enforcement. There's not enforcement.
No one in my neighborhood did. But if
Well,
they're doing it at apartments, that's a problem.
Yes. And so, so then there's a neighborhood up by me that they're very upset about their parking ordinance and that they didn't have an opportunity to speak on it. And okay, so it's a block with 18 homes. 13 of those homes have signed a petition. They hired an attorney to represent them at the Public Works meeting. And that happened just maybe a month ago. And I was really amazed because even if you hired an attorney and you are single family homes, they were told, you know, why didn't they come to the meeting and talk to us? Well, number one, they didn't know there was going to be a meeting. There was no communication. Number two, they have to come to the meeting and be present. What if they work from, you know, 5? What if they work at Patrick's restaurant from 5 to midnight? You know, they can't attend the meeting. And so those kinds of processes are really troubling. But then there was the Tonyawatha parking ban that was going in. And those people, they mobilized, you know, I'll just say, you know, maybe it's people who have a little more time and flexibility in their schedules. Most of those people live on the lake. And Nadia, I saw that. Yep, it might come down to having large homes and higher property tax values. And they all kind of talked, and 13 of them, the same number that signed the petition on Shore Acres, came to the city council meeting and expressed their concerns with it. And I initially, when Ronisha's parking ordinance was going in, I was the only one to vote no, because I had very big concerns about people in her building having small children and having to park blocks and blocks away, or the elderly now not having any parking on their street. I was the only one to vote no. But then when the Tonyawatha issue came up, it was unanimous no. Everybody voted no. And I was like, that's very interesting. And then when these 13 folks signed the petition and came to the Public Works meeting, they were told, we're not going to give this any more time. We've spent a lot of time on this and we've got a lot to do. And they spent 15 minutes talking about it at that meeting. And that meeting was all of 40 minutes long. So I was like, wow, 13 people, they didn't matter either, Ronisha. So these are some of the challenges that you're not alone in facing. I faced this on my street several years ago and rallied 8 of my neighbors who went into the community center and spoke to Public Works. And as soon as we all aired our grievances and said, no, we don't want this parking ordinance, the first thing that was said when we were done speaking was, so when did the signs go up? So, you know, and here I am complaining. I'm criticized often for complaining too much about the city, but that's why I'm stepping up to lead. I'm not one to just complain. I want to help make change.
So just to end my whole comment period, I asked the city manager to create a task force for this because it's obviously a problem. It's happened in multiple places. And I don't know if he has the authority to do that. So that's something that I would like anybody joining the council to focus on, is creating a task force among alders, the mayor, the parks and city services, and community members, and trying to find a solution for us so these problems don't keep happening.
Absolutely. And you know, I think we shouldn't really be making permanent land use changes in a time when nothing is typical and all these people are at home working. Why are we doing that? I don't know. I don't know what was driving this
Good point.
ordinance change. We have gotten emails on the council from people who live at the Current that they have gotten parking tickets. They're having problems there too. And those are, you know, market rate apartments, pretty expensive. So you're not alone in this, Renisha. And I think it's, you know, honestly, I don't know that why can't we create a task force? I mean, if that's not in our code of ordinances, well, then let's put it in there. You know, we're the ones that establish these rules. The city council does. So let's do it. I'm getting excited here. All right.
Thank you, Renisha, for bringing it up.
Yeah, valid concerns. Okay, Jason.
Yeah, hi. This is another big picture kind of question. And its context, I've been in Monona for over a couple decades now. And when Patrick mentioned working on the CDBG project at Lake Point a while ago, it reminded me that when I moved to Monona, that was the first year that Dane County became eligible for CDBG funding. Obviously, the city of Madison had been getting it for a long time, but that was the first year the county became eligible. And way back then, Monona was a linchpin in terms of the communities outside of Madison. And so I thought, well, this is really interesting. And I went to the public hearing in Monona to talk about the CDBG grant. And Monona officials stood up and said, we don't think we should take federal money for this kind of thing. And I thought, what have I done? Where have I moved to? So it really had a damping effect on my participation in the city of Monona at the civic level. Things have changed somewhat, but I'm kind of curious. You know, things are really different in Dane County now. Dane County is growing like gangbusters. These other communities are thriving. They are really growing, and we've got a special situation here in terms of our geographic ability to grow. So my question is, how do we attract families, young families, and diverse families to Monona? What do you think our key issues are in terms of being attractive compared to the other communities?
Where are they going to live? That's my first question, right? Where are they going to live in Monona? We all know what the real estate market is like in Monona right now, and we're really missing the whole middle housing piece. I know when we bought our first house in Monona, we kind of stretched to do that, and we were lucky and fortunate to be able to do that. But honestly, good luck finding a home in Monona right now for under $260,000, $280,000, $300,000 right now. So really, when we're looking at developable property in the city of Monona, you know, are we thinking about attracting people like that, or are we completely comfortable with just the way the status quo is? And I think in some respects, the city is happy with just maintaining. And I feel that in many respects, they're caretakers. They're not really innovators. They're caretaking the status quo instead of thinking about, you know, what's best for the future, what's best for the growth of Monona. And clearly we're a landlocked city, so developmental opportunities are hard to come by. But then again, I look at Southtown and I look at other parcels like that, and I think about how malls are dying and how we can incorporate housing into parcels like that. And you know, we need to be innovative. And I know that's not completely and utterly answering your question, but I think it's a start. And I think that one of the things that we need to do as a city is we need to identify every developable parcel that we have right now. And even if it's a brownfield development, if it's something that we need to redevelop, we need to take a complete and utter inventory of that and put together a toolbox available to the development community and other stakeholders in the community that we can look at it and take a hard look at it, change zoning regulations and bring them into the 21st century and think about how we can really affect affordable housing in the city if we're going to try and be a diverse city. If we're not going to try and be a diverse city, then, that whole conversation is moot, right? So that's about what I have right now, but I can guarantee that it's a focus of mine. Being the former chair of the City of Madison CDBG Commission, I'm well aware of the tools that are available to developers to create affordable housing. And I'm not talking about like 100% subsidized housing. I'm talking about things that are available to people that are in the workforce, people that are working through the jobs. This is not a gimme, but those tools are available, and I don't think Monona is taking advantage of them. Thank you.
That's accurate. Nadia.
Oh, I mean, I don't have a ton to add other than thank you, Jason, for bringing that up. I had to actually look up what CDBG stood for. So the Community Development Block Grant, and just realizing the amount of money that is out there, and that to not take advantage or at least look into it, certainly is short-sighted. And to kind of reach out to other local governments or anybody who has expertise in either applying for these grants, receiving these grants. It's obviously there's a template out there that it's been done before. And to me, why not look into it as a means to certainly to bring in, to you're receiving money, and then also that could bring in certainly more families and more diversity. So I think that's really interesting and intriguing, and that it's you think of something like Wisconsin, the state of Wisconsin and the UW kind of Wisconsin idea, and part of that, big part of that is the federal funding. The reason why the University of Wisconsin-Madison is so successful is because it's in the top 3 universities for bringing in federal grant money. So why would Monona wanna, it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't fit with kind of that Wisconsin idea. So it's really interesting. And I'll let Kristie has a lot more to say about it than I do. But yeah. I got
One more
more.
thing. Sorry, Kristie. Some of the other issues are
Okay.
obviously transportation, right? So Madison Metro doesn't really come to the city of Monona, at least not in a substantial way. Even the city of Sun Prairie has Madison Metro that will do express routes to employment centers, but Monona tries to keep itself isolated. And there's always lots of talk about, and I guess I bristle when I hear things like, well, we don't want those people to move here, or we don't want those people from Chicago to move here. And we all know what that coded phrase means, but it's reality, right? And I think that some of that is driven by a reluctance to acknowledge that diversity makes cities interesting and economically viable and vibrant. And I think that's, I'm sorry, what's that?
I was just saying healthier, just all around healthier.
So, transportation is definitely an issue. And if I'm living in Monona without a car, how realistic is it that I get to downtown Madison to work, right? It's not very realistic. So.
When I was running the chamber, I wondered this a lot, like, why do I see cranes up everywhere all over Dane County, but I don't see them in Monona? What is going on? And so part of the problem is a lot of our plans are outdated, and they allow for so much flexibility that developers are left confused. And so they've come to the table with development ideas, and they've squandered away. I've talked with developers who they were asked to revise their plans over and over and over. And one developer told me, we spent $150,000 tweaking our plan at the bequest of the CDA, and they had no intention of approving that plan. And then the Plan Commission denied that plan. And so, when you have no real guidelines, I guess the worst thing you can tell a developer isn't no, it's I don't know. And that's the position we're in right now. What we need is a citywide economic development plan. And this would talk about our opportunities. So by me, there's 2 vacant lots, both city owned. The city mows them regularly. We have to maintain them. We have to shovel the sidewalks. But they're just sitting there empty. And so they're costing us money. And, that's something we could ask a business to, we could actually target a business with a citywide economic development plan saying, we're looking for someone to create some pop-up shops. If you've seen that trend of people are buying these cute little storage sheds and they're brightly colored. There's one called the Western Market in Muskegon, Michigan. It's so fabulous. I could even see it being in the parking lot of Southtown until we get our act together there as a revenue stream and a way to kind of really support these micropreneurs that bring diverse businesses to our community.
Could you imagine that as a boardwalk, like those pop-up shops on a boardwalk along the shoreline of like San Damiano too? Yeah.
Fantastic. Yes, at San Damiano would be fantastic. And we could be doing these things, but I was working at the Fitchburg Chamber at the time when Fitchburg developed their citywide economic development plan, and it's called City in Motion. And it just has all of these different sites and ideas of what the city would like to see there. And so when you create those guidelines and help developers see your vision, then you've cultivated an environment that developers want to be in. Currently, they just all have a big question mark right when they come to us because we don't know what we want. We have no vision. So we can't provide a vision to developers that we want to come here. And, as far as diversity, I have concerns about our school district. A lot of people want their children going to a school that is multicultural, that is diverse, that resembles the community of tomorrow, not a community of yesterday. And I had a few conversations with people where they told me, one was a divorced couple, one lives in Monona, one lives in Madison. They were like, there's no way we're sending our child to Monona Grove. It's too white. They told me that. So they send their daughter to Madison School District. And then, and while the school district is doing a great job on that front, they have the Black Student Union, they've got the Parent Equity Council. They can't control our housing policy. They can't control our public transit policies. And so, I just feel like, we really got to get a handle on these things. We've got to start thinking bigger and really prioritize. It's making priorities, prioritizing our public transit. We have a sweet little bus system. It's just that it only serves the 9 to 5 crowd, the people working at UW. It goes from here to UW and to the hospitals, 9 to 5, that window. And, we could do better, but it has to be made a priority. As when I was running MESBA, I asked for years because the business community, they want a bus service. They need to get employees off the isthmus to come here. And I would ask the city, why can't we have more regular bus service? We can't afford that, Kristie. We can't afford that. Well, we just bought an $8.6 million parcel. So we obviously can afford it. It's not a priority.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Jason.
Yeah,
Well, yeah.
sorry for the long response, Jason.
Yeah, these are all long, aren't they? Okay. I see Mitch has a question for Patrick and Nadia. And then we've got to get to San Damiano because Jim has that and he's mentioned it a couple of times. Big issue for sure.
Okay, here's my question. I'll try to keep it as brief as I can for Nadia and Patrick. Both of you local business owners here in Monona, and it gives you kind of a unique personal perspective on the small
Mitch, I'm
business
gonna tell you.
environment.
Hey, Mitch, 1 second.
in
You're
the
having
community.
connectivity issues.
Yes.
We're struggling to hear
An
you.
impression, and I've been for a long time now, that
Okay.
The answer is 23.
Oh, hey, Mitch, we're struggling to hear you. I think you might want to hop out and hop back in maybe because
hear me now?
you're frozen. You're
No.
frozen.
Ask them to chat.
Yeah, can you type it into the chat?
Better now?
Type your question into the chat.
Hello?
Okay, Mitch, type your question into the chat. Type it. to the chat, Mitch. Okay.
Okay.
Oh,
Does anyone else have it?
let's hop to San Damiano. Okay,
Yep.
if someone,
Hey, Chris.
You can come back to Mitch.
Any
Hey,
better?
Christie. I just had a quick,
yeah, Heidi.
yeah, I just had a quick comment before I had to jump because a lot of people already answered my question. But in kind of piggybacking off of some of Jason's comments and economic development, is just wanted to kind of think about the other like cultural events that you have ideas for bringing into Monona so that our kids can be exposed to those types of events like the urban arts movement and the Pride Ride. And you know, you did the racial justice listening session. You know, I want to see more of that, especially when it comes to the LGBT, QTPOC, BIPOC communities, that we're not only doing it as you know, citizens, but then like, how are we involving our businesses so that like Monona Drive can be almost just this extension of like the reputation of what Atwood has as like a thriving arts LGBT, you know, community. Just wanted to throw that in there. It's not a question per se, because I think you've answered a lot of what I've already wanted to ask, but just food for thought.
Yeah, I feel like the Southtown area is a prime grounds for that. That is
Absolutely.
already a multicultural neighborhood. And so, you know, we want to embrace, and while the multicultural side is in the city of Madison, not in the city of Monona, we should still embrace that and integrate that
Absolutely.
into that development. It could be a food and music and arts destination like we've never seen before, like the
I
county.
absolutely love that idea of like the tiny
Fantastic.
pop-ups, like, and attracting businesses of color and you know, queer owners and things like that. As yeah.
So the city of Monona does not have a revolving loan fund, right? And the city of Madison does. The city of Sun Prairie does. And one of the things that I would like to do if elected to the council is create a revolving loan fund, an economic development fund for the city. So if you're creating jobs and you're creating jobs for minorities and everything's scored, right? If you're creating jobs for minorities, creating jobs for women, women-owned businesses, minority-owned businesses, LGBTQ-owned businesses, you know, if there's bank financing involved, well, the city can match some of it to a certain extent, depending on how many jobs are created. Other cities do that. Our city doesn't. Why? We say we don't have the money, but we have the money to purchase. Well, again, let's just say San Damiano, we can spend $8 million of the public's money to do that, but we can't fund economic development fund with $250,000 of seed money to then start making grants towards small businesses that are, you know, in development stages, right? And I think that there's definitely an opportunity to do that, and that coincides with what you're saying. And I think it could bring a pretty good advantage to the city of Monona in that regard.
It'd be an investment in our future. It'd be an investment in our future.
And it's not like we're giving it away. We'll get it back, or ideally we'll get it back at some point, but
Probably some front end costs, just getting it set up. But what a great investment, because businesses would want to come here. Once again, we'd be cultivating an environment where more businesses and diverse set of businesses want to come.
yeah.
Okay, Mitch, you're good to go now, it looks like. Try again. Take two.
So can you guys hear me now?
Oh,
Can you hear me now?
dang, we can't. It's
You wanna-
still-
Yeah,
Can
do you
you
want to try
type it in the
typing it?
chat? Can you type it in the chat, Mitch?
I
Type it.
did.
You did?
Yeah.
I don't see
I guess
it.
she didn't get it. I don't know.
Okay, okay.
I guess I'm operating from where Perseverance is right now on Mars. So there's like some kind of a weird delay thing going on.
Yeah.
Are you trying to tell us you're on Mars right now? Is that it?
Awesome.
I'm the Martian.
Okay.
All right. So let's talk about San Damiano. I saw Jim wants to talk about San Damiano. I don't know
Yes,
that
please.
there's. Oh, so Emily has a suggestion, Mitch. If you turn off your video, it might help you. It might help you. why don't you try now, Mitch? And then if not, then we'll kick into Sandy.
Any better? Can you guys hear me now?
Yeah, we
Better.
can.
Or
It's
is it-
better.
So it doesn't suck as bad. Okay,
No.
good.
Correct.
Not quite as bad.
So this is for Nadia and Patrick. I know both of you are small business owners in Monona, different types of businesses, but small businesses as it is. The impression that I have been left with for the almost 14 years I've lived here is that city government is unbelievably responsive to Monona Bank. They're unbelievably responsive to big developers, and they're unbelievably responsive to big box merchandisers like Walmart. But when it comes to small business, some small businesses have to jump through hoops just to get something done. I get the impression that some are actually harassed to a certain extent. So I'd like to know what the two of you can bring to the table practically to help small businesses from a government standpoint.
Well, that is an interesting question. Maybe I can start with an example. Last week, I got a little note from the building inspection department that I needed to pay an $89 fee because somehow they lost my sign application for the restaurant on Monona Drive. The signs are the same as they were before. They never changed. The only thing that changed on them was the graphics, but the sizes were the same. But they still were adamant about this $89 fee that I needed to come up with on the fly to become in compliance to review the signs. And I'm like, well, you see them, you drive past them, you saw them, but I needed to then create drawings and all this other stuff. But you know, I don't necessarily think that's harassment. It's no different than in the city. Actually, the city of Madison's even worse when it comes to signs. But I guess just look at the makeup of the current council. The makeup of the current council consists of people that have worked in government and are retired or consulting for the government, or in nonprofits that work hand in hand with, well, the government. You don't really have any representation on the council that comes from private industry. And I wouldn't want an entire council made up of people that own small businesses, just like I don't want an entire council that's made up of people that have just worked in the government, because they lack that perspective. They lack that leadership perspective. I mean, you talked earlier today about, or in this conversation, we talked earlier today about how, you know, what was the city's plan when COVID happened, right? You know, the lack of planning that existed when COVID happened. I mean, I can talk about that for days regarding my experience as a small business owner that owned restaurants that, you know, 3 days before the shutdown happened, we're sitting there trying to figure out how we're going to survive when we're going to see a large amount of revenue disappear overnight. And we're not getting any communication from the government or our elected leaders about how we're going to deal with that crisis. But we adapted. We preserved all of our jobs. We adapted on the fly on any given day. We worked our way into, you know, a manufacturing plant and segued from dine-in to carry out delivery and making family meals and just doing all these things that we never really did because we had no choice. And what I mean by that is that as a small business owner, when you're looking at the balance sheet and you're seeing, you know, 70% of your revenue suddenly evaporate, you got to make changes. If you work for the government, you are kind of working with or at least you have the mentality that you're working with a bottomless pit of revenue that you can just keep funding things over and over again, and you don't really have to worry about shutting down if you're not making changes. So I suppose that we bring, and I don't mean to speak for you, Nadia, but we bring an attitude of, well, we can't fail, right? We can't fail. We have to persevere. We have to take care of the people that are working for us. And we have to sometimes tighten our belts, and maybe I eat a lot of pizza because I can't afford to spend money on, you know, because as a small business owner, you're the first one that doesn't get paid. So that perspective and bringing that perspective to council is something that it does not have right now. Thank you.
And so thanks, Patrick, and I'll chime in. So first of all, Mitch, I actually do not have a business in Monona. And there's probably a reason. I am a woman, I'm BIPOC status. I have actually been denied help from Monona Bank for a PPP loan. I actually had to get it out of Georgia. And I had all the paperwork ready, and suddenly I was told that I needed to have my taxes submitted, which is not true. And I'm obviously still pretty upset about that because I really wanted to support a local bank. And that's why I went to Monona Bank as opposed to Wells Fargo, to some other places that I've been banking with for quite some time. And I went as far as opened multiple checking accounts, including my business accounts. So when I look at it, there's a huge loss right there that they left out. As we're talking about welcoming and being inclusive and looking at including these small business owners who are also women and BIPOCs, to me, that's a real lost opportunity there. And I also look at things during COVID. What's really hard for my business is it's a small business, and I actually work with students. And so my business has taken a huge hit. And what I have to do myself is I have to research the grant opportunities, and they do exist. And what's interesting is Dane County has them. There's the WWBIC, the Wisconsin Women's Business Initiative Corporation. And to me, there's a real opportunity for Monona to say, hey, let's get a hold of these business owners and say these things exist for you to apply to. And actually, I neglected to mention earlier, I'm a co-founder of the U Group, which is Empowerment for Women Entrepreneurs. And it targets specifically women who are either sole proprietors or LLCs. And the idea is an educational component. It's not a networking event, there's no fees. And the idea, so what we do is we share our experiences, our opportunities, where we learn about different grant opportunities, whether in this case, COVID has been huge. So you can look for PPE funds. You can look for these small Dane County buy local. And to me, that's a real opportunity for the city council and the leadership in Monona to reach out to small businesses and say, are you aware of these places, as well as who's actually going to work with you in finding in PPP funding? Because again, I was, flat out denied the ability to even work to apply for that PPP loan. And they also, for Monona Bank, they sent an email with my social security number that was not secured. And so there are a lot of things that, are very upsetting to me as a person and as well as a small business owner. So I do think there's a great opportunity for, people such as myself and for Patrick to really be advocates for those small business owners. And I really do think Monona has an opportunity to thrive in terms of developing and helping and assisting small business owners. And I think the community itself really wants to support them. We really do thrive in supporting our local businesses. And I'd like to see more of that. And I think truly we can champion, because we're there, we know what it's like to start a business ground up. And I never had any financial support. I just did it on my own. And
same here.
Yeah. And every day I look for different opportunities. I have to sit there and research things. I have to call up people. And I'm thankful that there are other people, over time that have helped me, but it's not easy. And, you never know whether or not you're going to survive COVID. So I do think that having that kind of different perspective, and that we're not beholden to any government. It's just like, we know what it's like to really be anxious and nervous, because our livelihood, as well as anyone who works for us, is dependent upon our survival. So yeah, I guess that's probably a long-winded answer.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I wanted, if I can add just 2 cents on it, because I owned a
No, you
business.
can't. Yeah.
I owned a business for 10 years too. And, I think we as business owners have a very different relationship with money. We've worried about how are we going to make payroll? If we can't, we might not have to take a check that we might not be able to take a paycheck that month because we're short on funds and paying our employees, and we come last, and so I think I have a much more tighter relationship with money and a higher value for it.
Wait, Kristie, we might not take a paycheck for 1 month.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
But we're not just advocates for business. Though. We're not just advocates for business.
No.
We're advocates for our staff. We're advocates for our people.
Yes.
We're paying living wages. We're paying health insurance. We're making sure that our people are taken care of. And it's like, what, I guess, how does that coincide with folks in Monona government that have never had to lead an organization?
Yeah.
No,
And
with unlimited funds.
yeah. And, I think also we have the opportunity here to bring some balance. It's about balance. And we all have owned small businesses, not giant corporations. And then if you look back at the past mayors, every past mayor that I could find, as far back as I could find, has been a business owner, with the exception of the current mayor.
I want to make sure that people know that that's not the litmus test, right? It's not the litmus
But it's
test.
very helpful because it
it's
says
helpful,
led
but
organizations, you've led teams, you know how to nurture teams and cultivate, a culture that, is, successful, but I think it's important personally. I don't. Maybe we disagree on that.
okay.
All right. So, okay, we'll get to the last question. So sorry, we're running over, everybody, but we thank you for hanging in.
San Damiano, right?
Yeah. Boom. Big opportunity, big challenges as well, because it's for me, I look at the budget of what we put toward the San Damiano planning this year. So the mayor has allotted $50,000. Let me make sure I'm reading it all correctly. That is going to cover for this year. It is going to cover a development of a conceptual plan, appraisal services, grant specialist services, and an archaeological survey for $50,000. So our design for Stonebridge alone was $40,000. So I don't know how we're going to do that. I guess we're really going to pinch some pennies. The other thing is, what about policing? That's a 10-acre park, and most of our policing is concentrated at the south end of our city. So we haven't budgeted any extra for policing up there. That concerns me. What about the maintenance? We've got now a historical landmark home, a mansion that is in a state of disrepair, and we need, it's now on us to keep that rehabbed and protected and safe so people aren't breaking in. And look at all the mowing and the tree work that needs to happen there alone. So, this budget is not adequate because this is a lofty endeavor. And, one of the major pitfalls that happens when you undertake a project like this, and it's so tempting. I want to plan that myself. I want to plan what's going to happen there. I have ideas, is that right now it's a very small group of people. And I think it's unfortunate, but I believe they're already planning what's happening there. And we need to do public engagement. Like 2 months ago at the last city council meeting, the mayor shared, I think it was one of my committee meetings or something. The who just did that, Jim Lampy? Sorry. Jim Lampy just put a comment in there that was kind of like, what? Puke, what? So she said that someone has stepped up to donate $50,000 for that park, for the fundraising that they're doing. That is enough to start public engagement. That is ample amounts. We could start public engagement for $5,000. Let's do it. Why aren't we doing it yet? And once again, it's this small group of people who are, it's the
it's a small group of
club.
Let me clarify. It's a small group of wealthy people spending your money.
Possibly. But yeah, so, I have major concerns, and when there was a question about what are we going to champion, I really struggled to not say San Damiano because, the way the riverfront development went, for instance, we have our smallest park in our park system there, which was budgeted and initially was budgeted for 500,000. Then it went up to 900,000, and the total cost came in at 1.9 million for that park. So I have major concerns about San Damiano, and it needs to be done right. And I've been on the front lines of economic development here in Monona, running the chamber and doing that in Fitchburg as well. And I would ask you to ask yourselves, what do the incumbents, what is their experience in economic development? What's their experience in parks? I serve on Dane County Parks Commission. That gives me a great insight as well. Patrick.
Again, it's a small group of wealthy people making decisions with your money. And I'm not saying that I don't know. I think there's a way to preserve public access to San Damiano and public access to the water while actually having some development there. And maybe that's not the most popular thing to say, but I think it should be explored, because if we're going to spend that much money and we're going to mortgage our futures on this piece of property, that, you know, we should explore all opportunities. And I've heard many people say that public-private partnerships don't work. Well, they can work. And you know, like I mentioned before, why can't we develop the waterfront in some fashion where it's accessible to many people, but maybe on the backside, you're developing some of it to offset the expense. You know, I'm always a little bit wary when I feel that folks that may not necessarily, well, I'm not going to go there anyway, but I don't know. I think that there's a lot going on with that project that's going to come to life. And one of those things that upsets me greatly is that you know, we have a sitting council person right now who contracted with her business associate. I mean, it's part of, they own a business together, and the city paid that person $15,000 to do a feasibility study. And this is true and legitimate. You can pull it from the city. But to me, I think we live in an era where people are skeptical of government in the first place. And that goes back to what I was talking about ethics before. I mean, you don't want to have optics like that, because it definitely lends itself to suspicion. So when, you know, and I'll just come out and say it, I mean, literally there's a person on our council who owns a business with another person, and that person ended up receiving $15,000 to do a feasibility study to see if it was feasible to raise private money to the tune of like $12 million. They created a 10-page report that I got today that says, no, it's not feasible. And we paid $15,000 for that. And it's not a conflict, because the person the alder who is a business associate of this person simply just abstained from the vote. But it wasn't a public process. It didn't go out for a bid. There wasn't an opportunity for other people to see if they could do it at a better rate in the public's interest. And again, it's optics that we don't need, but it's the way that things have happened in Monona for a long time. And I'm an outsider. I'm an outsider in the sense that I'm not part of I am not part of the generational experience, the generational leadership of Monona, right? Neither's Kristie, neither's Nadia.
There's Nadia. None of us are, yeah.
And none of us are.
We're
We're
not
outsiders to a degree, but I've lived here for 25 years. But that's the kind of thing that really tweaks me, because, you know, ethics and transparency are very important. And that's just something that I can't let it go. I can't let it go. It wouldn't have flown in the city of Madison. No way, shape or form would it have flown in the city of Madison, or the city of Sun Prairie, or the city of Fitchburg. But it's something that's okay here in the city of Monona to have your business associate, when you're on the council, receive $15,000 from the city, and the only oversight was the city council said it was okay. That's not okay to me.
I would say a couple things is, you know, some people aren't exactly sure what public-private partnership means. And we've got an excellent example of that in Monona. It's the Aldo Leopold Nature Center. So you might not know that the city of Monona owns that land. And we have a public-private partnership with Aldo Leopold Nature Center, where they maintain the land. They basically operate that as a park. It's open to you and me to go out there and hike anytime we want. They do all the improvements there. They actually pay the city between $15,000 and $16,000 a year for fire and police services. It's an acronym called PILOT. It's payment in lieu of taxes. And that is a fantastic destination for our community and for all of Dane County. I'm not saying that we need that at San Damiano. I'm just illustrating that as an example of a public-private partnership. It can feel very much like parkland and a very welcoming space. But we can also make money on it rather than it having to just be a huge drain and strain on our resources. Jim, you had your hand up.
Well, I just wanted to thank you for, hosting something a little different and giving people an opportunity to participate. There's only a handful of us on here, but I think that it's important that a lot of people recognize that we're in a lose-lose situation with the tax man and paying, most of our property taxes, or a big chunk, of our city part, not the school part.
Yeah.
The debt service is ridiculous.
Yeah.
And this whole Triangle Square project, including the yacht club, didn't turn out like Mayor Bob anticipated, and that's too bad. I think it's going to turn out to be a beautiful place, and that's fantastic for the long-term success of Monona. We have new buildings instead of old buildings. Someone's paying for that forever. But we have an opportunity with the shopping mall to do something different, whatever it is, I don't care, but something different and thoughtful.
Yes, thoughtful.
And San Damiano, I don't think that we need another $8.5 million plus $2 million, 17 bathroom park for everybody of every kind of association that wants to go into every kind of bathroom possible so they can be comfortable. I don't think we need every single thing for every single person on every single park. I think that the last couple were ridiculous, including the one that's at the end of Tonyawatha. That park should never have been developed. That was a beautiful park the way it was, where the sailing club is. And, I understand that it needs to be improved sometimes, but not everybody always needs to get into every single park. And we're wasting money hand over fist. There's no fiscal responsibility in the city of Monona whatsoever. And everybody that I know who bitches is not here on this chat. But I hear a lot of people who spend a lot of money on property taxes who are very upset, and I'm surprised they're not here.
Yeah.
I don't feel that it's responsible to take San Damiano and make it into another $8.5 million plus $2 million shelter plus $17 million in accessible parkways and a boardwalk and everything. We don't need a $20 million park at the end of Monona Drive to prove that we have more parks than everybody else.
We could do something park-like and have it be a revenue stream for the city, Jim. We really could.
You sell the big end to a developer who can build a 4-story building, and the rest of it's all paid for the city. I just don't think we need any more parks. I mean, look at the last one. This ridiculous thing with a skating rink at the Triangle.
Yeah.
This pissed off a lot of city residents that were yacht club members, lifelong city of Monona people who were mayors, aldermen, ambassadors of every kind, and nobody ever listened. This current mayor never listened. The last mayor, who was my friend Bob, never listened. Nobody ever engaged the yacht club at one moment for 1 minute at any time. Nobody ever had a conversation because our city attorney, Bill Cole, said that he could defeat us in a second.
Yeah.
It was like Amazon rolling over whoever they want to. This is exactly how it happened. And I appreciate that all of you three are taking personal responsibility for doing something different. And I do know everybody on the city council now. I built 2 of their houses. It's not like I don't know people. It's not like I don't have an option to talk to people. But I do feel like social responsibility is important. But I feel like thinking outside of the box is more important. And I don't feel like we have any of that right now.
Well, Jim, when you do something for 40 years and you're in a position in government for 40 years, I mean, it just lends itself to complacency and, in my opinion, caretaker status, really. I mean, where's the fresh ideas coming from if that's all you've ever done, right?
Well, Patrick, you don't have anything but fresh ideas. And Kristie, I think you're the same.
Not all of them are good.
I don't know Nadia. But I feel like this is a fresh approach. And I think it's a sea change that's needed.
It is.
I don't want to hear any of the 3 of you say we need a $8.5 million park plus $5 million in renovations later.
Oh.
And I had an opportunity to ask you the question tonight.
Yeah. Jim, I think one of the things that I've learned on this campaign trail is a lot of people are like you. They're very frustrated. And unfortunately, I've talked to a lot of people who've lost hope. They have lost the hope that they will have any voice in this local government, in their local government. And that just for me is so disheartening because I'm a person who embraces public engagement. You know, you're familiar with my work at MESBA. It was create another committee of stakeholders. Let's do more work together. I want you to tell me what our initiatives are, and you, the stakeholders, drive and guide my work, you know, or our work, I should say. And so I think this is a really important time, not in our history, but in the future of Monona. And so what I ask all of you here to do, because it seems maybe like we're really challenged in campaigning this year. We can't advertise on Facebook. There's no political ads allowed. We can't
Can't
go
do doors.
to the store. Yard signs, they're coming out, but hopefully they won't be in snowbanks. So it seems though a lot of times elections are won in Monona by talking to your friends and neighbors and family members. So please, if you want to volunteer for us to make some phone calls, just to let people know, there's new candidates. You know, Jim, you're in. All right, thank you.
I just want to know a vision for San Damiano that doesn't include an $8.5 million park with $5 million of improvements and no tax revenue. I need to hear that from somebody. Otherwise, I'm running too.
Yeah.
As a write-in, right? As a write-in.
I have a big mouth and a budget.
Here's the thing. I think parks are great, but that's not my focus. My focus is employing people, housing people, feeding people, and clothing people. Those are my priorities.
We need
my
tax
priorities are generally people based. We have parks, we do, right? And I think they're great, but it's not my priority.
And we just have so many priorities that are important. You know, my opponent ran last year or 2 years ago entirely on the fact that she would build a public safety building. Where are we now?
I love Mary, but she shunned us at the Yacht Club when we needed to be heard. Nobody ever approached us. Nobody ever tried to engage us. Nobody
He's
ever
not a
talked.
Communicator, you know.
They lost $1 million because they didn't talk to somebody.
They did.
We lost $1 million.
Yeah, you guys, everybody was a loser in that one, honestly.
So
speaking about parks, I listened to an hour and a half today of people complaining that children who took something before the Parks Commission today, my neighbors and my son and some others that want to put a mountain bike trail in Maywood Park, and I heard neighbors complaining about every which way that this couldn't happen, even though the kids are willing to do it themselves. They're willing to do it themselves and utilize the park. And everyone's saying that the park is overutilized. I don't know when the last time you were to Maywood Park, but it's certainly not overutilized. And it was
I remodeled 3 houses, Patrick, on Maywood Park. So
yeah, how often have you seen that parking lot full, right? And it's just like the kids are trying to use it for a mountain bike path and everybody's trying to shoot them down. It was the most depressing thing I think I've ever seen. So,
Kristie, can I ask you your vision as mayor for Damiano? It all comes down to that for me.
Absolutely. Number one, public engagement has to happen. So, you know, I can have a vision, but we have to be guided by the public. So please, you and your people who want something maybe a little bit different, you need to make sure, I know you'll be at the table. I know you'll be there, but we also need our leaders to start the public engagement now, because we're going to start spending and spending and spending.
What is your vision?
If I were going to design it, you want to know what I would do? Is yes. I think, what about a bed and breakfast? We create a bed and breakfast in the home. So one of the things I've learned with Dane County Parks is like the worst kind of land that can get donated to us is land with a house on it or land with a building. No park wants that because it's a liability and it's too much maintenance and it's too much cost. So I feel like similar to Aldo Leopold Nature Center, we could lease this property to a hotelier that wants to run a bed and breakfast there, create a cafe inside. And then number one, we're generating room tax. So think of all the weddings that happen at Old Brick Gardens or Eastside Club. None of those people stay in Monona hotels. They all head to East Wash or they go downtown. So we could generate room tax. We could activate that park day and night, because I have real concerns that, you know, people are going to be sleeping in that park all night. They're, you know, while the park will say it's closing at 10 p.m., it's a very big park and there's a lot of land to hang out there and all kinds of nefarious activity could happen. It's similar to Olin
Christie,
Park.
that house could never generate enough revenue to pay for the
Well-
$8.5 million we paid for it.
I agree. But
I think
okay,
that
Jim, here's the other part of this though. The county is pledging $2 million contribution for that park. And so one of the things we absolutely have to do is we have to have transparency on what are the strings attached to that $2 million contribution.
I think
There
that
are-
2 million, I think that 2 million contribution though, there's a caveat that you can never develop it if you take that $2 million.
But where does the tax revenue come from that we desperately need to subsidize our extremely high property taxes in the city of Monona? We need to have something taxable on this $8.5 million parcel. If somebody disagrees, I'd like to know how they think that we don't have too many parks already.
Oh boy. There's so many things we got to do. Jim, if I could tell you a little about how we're handling our debt service, we aren't
I
putting,
understand debt service. I own
No.
a business.
I've got a different thing though. There's our debt service. We've got a negotiated private deal in how our debt service is being financed. And instead of putting it out to competitive bid, we've got a handshake deal that's going on with an organization, and it's happened more than 17 years ago. And so when you bid out your debt service, right now, I've been talking with Ehlers, this municipal finance company in Wisconsin, very highly revered. They're getting 4 to 9 bids on any of the debt service that they're putting out for cities. We're not putting our debt service out for bid. We will do so much better if we can do that. So that's going to be step one, is we need to put our debt service out for bid. We're actually operating without a financial advisor, and that is really unwise as a city.
Well,
So
these are good steps, but Kristie, what are we going to do about San Damiano if you're at the helm?
But Jim, honestly, as a mayor, it's not up to me. I serve the public and I need to hear from the public. If it were up to me, I would probably say we should sell off a small strip of that. And like you said, do some kind of diversify our housing mix. So maybe it could be the cottage courtyard apartments or garden apartments or condos, but creative condos, not a wall of condos. Nobody wants to see that. I know you guys do. You do, Jeff.
So I've been here forever. I'm on a whole bunch of city committees and have been on a bunch of city committees. I've had problems with the city when I lived on Belle Isle with flooding for the whole time I was there, and nothing got handled. And there's a lot of frustration. So I got to know everybody very well because I was the face of Belle Isle. Of 84 properties, I was the one that had the big mouth.
Yeah.
I was the one that sandbagged when the water came over. I had a truck, I had a body, and I had guys who would just help me.
Awesome.
Or my employees. I've been around here for a long time and have very, very strong intent of always being here. But I support the three of you. So my last thing is, I'd like to know how I can better support the three of you to do what needs to get done to take care of business.
Help us get elected.
Can I chime in
What do
here?
I need to
Please
do?
Nadia. Please, Nadia.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is tackling, so here we purchased this property without the foresight, right? So here we are, right?
Again.
So certainly upsetting when you think about the tax dollars, and then when you start thinking ahead as how much more money is going to go into it and what are, as you mentioned, the revenue generating sources. But part of it is, what you're asking is for us to be the experts. And I think this is a real challenge because not one of us said, hey, let's go buy San Damiano. So what I think, for me, it's first to say, can we look for a precedence for this? Can we find, are there other cities who have purchased such type of properties, and what have they done to create that revenue generating? Are there federal grant monies available that can help to develop in whatever means? Can we throw in, let's say, a farmer's market, something, it's really being creative. And part of it really does come from, if you think about it, we have 8,000 residents here. I guarantee that some people have ideas, right? And I'm guessing, Jim, you have a couple as well. And it's looking at some of what is already out there, what's been done. I can't imagine that this precedence hasn't been set somewhere else, maybe in the United States, right? And I think so starting there, I just, it's a really hard question because not one of us was involved in this process, right? And, you know, and that's a beat.
In my
question
opinion,
is, what can I do to help the three of you get elected?
How about at
Tell
the
your friends,
debate or the
tell your
debate?
friends.
Yeah,
Tell your
on March
friends,
Talk
6th,
to everybody you know.
on March
you know.
6th for the debate, you maybe, I know we can't publicly gather, but let people know about it. So they're watching, you know, people here, you know, comfort is the enemy of progress. And a lot of people here are very comfortable and they're just not engaged. And they just are like, none of these issues have touched me yet.
Yeah.
They haven't yet, but it's coming.
Kristie, can you create a website, which I don't even understand how this would be done? Can you create a website that you put a sign out that everybody go to and see, well, here's what the issues are and here's what
Oh,
we
God.
support?
Like right now, like I can't right now.
No, not tonight, but
Okay.
maybe
I just got mine
maybe
done.
signs before you print them. I mean, I know that people support what you guys are all about.
I know. Do you want to, I mean, if you want to host a forum with your friends or something, we could do something like this.
You can have outdoor gatherings that don't involve food with up to 50 people right now.
I got a big
Some
living
social-
room. I got a big living room.
You can have indoor
we did
gatherings for up to 25.
Fireside chat.
Yeah, fireside chat. We did a parking ramp forum. That was great. It was wonderful. You know, let's do something like that. We'll do it in the parking lot. Off Broadway Draft House supports us.
I don't want more of the same. I'm happy to help, but I just need to be told what to do so that I can mobilize and just do
Let
it.
us brainstorm it. Let us brainstorm some ideas and we'll get in touch with you. How about that?
Yeah,
So we
thank you.
love that you want to help us. Thank you so much. We do need help.
I just met Nadia tonight, but I know two of you already, Kristie. And
I'm the unknown, and that's really, you know, honestly, that's what I bring to the table is, you know, I'm not bringing a biased opinion. I'm coming in and I guess I enjoy tabula rasa, the blank slate here is I want to know what's important and I want to involve, you know, when we look at it, I want the community involved and also prioritizing who is going to be impacted the most by a given issue. And when you're talking about San Damiano, that's the whole community, right?
And now that you mentioned San Damiano, I don't know why we didn't put this up for a referendum. I mean, if anything was designed for a referendum ever, like it should have been a referendum whether or not we purchase it or not, right? It should be the people that decide, not wealthy people that aren't using their own money, I suppose.
I see
Right?
Mitch.
That don't have to worry about money.
You have something, Mitch?